from the 10,330 level on Nifty. We ended around 10,800. So it has been a good week. Let's see how this one pans out.
Absolutely. It's been a good past week. Volumes will be interesting. Most of the people have gone away on vacation, I think, by the end of this week. Let's hope that, in fact, Lata gives us a couple of leaves as well, more.
Well, that's the eternal hope. But on that note, let's kickstart the show with the top headlines. Wall Street ends sharply lower on Friday. Dow tumbles nearly 500 points to enter the correction territory as stocks fall on global growth fears. Asia starts the week with minor gains.
And India's trade deficit narrows to $16.67 billion in November despite a 41% surge in oil imports. The government says a sharp drop in the imports of gold and electronic goods has come to the rescue.
The newly elected chief ministers of MP, Chhattisgarh and Rajasthan will take oath today. Congress President Rahul Gandhi will be attending all the three oath-taking ceremonies, while a show of opposition unity will be the underlying theme.
And Shaktikant Das chairs his first and crucial RBI board meeting. Liquidity, credit delivery and governance framework issues taken up. And as we had reported, prompt corrective action was not discussed at this meeting. All right, then Asian markets, they have opened up more or less flattish. Some of those markets have recovered from the low point of the day. The Nikkei, in fact, is holding with the gain of around 0.3% approximately. Remember, that's factoring in a weaker yen as well. So the yen is holding at around 113.5 odd. And that's pretty good news, actually, because remember, we have seen the dollar showing some strength. So for an export-oriented economy, that's a relative outperformer today, sitting with a gain of close to around 0.5%. But remember, the Japanese market, that's a developed market. Let's take a look at some of those other markets. The Kospi was more or less flattish. It had opened up lower, but it's recovered from the low point of the day. And the other couple of markets as well. Both the Straits and the Taiwanese index should come up for you on the screen. Remember, these markets, in fact, they're not trading with any big losses. Though in Friday's trading session, the US markets, they ended sharply lower. So good to see a flattish to mildly positive start is what we're seeing on those Asian markets. And the SGX Nifty is indicating that after the big pullback we saw from around the 10,400 odd level in the past week, currently the Nifty, in fact, is holding at around 10,800, and the SGX Nifty is saying maybe 40 to 45 points more just to kickstart it.
Okay, so Asia is on the front foot, but Wall Street was definitely on the back foot because the stocks fell sharply lower on Friday, ending the week on a bleak note and sending the Dow Jones as well as S&P as well as Nasdaq into the correction territory. Now, weaker than expected data in China and Europe fueled concerns of a global economic slowdown. The Dow fell almost 500 points to its lowest level since early May. The S&P 500 also dropped around 2%, while the Nasdaq Composite pulled back around 2.25%. CNBC's Josh Lipton gets us a wrap of all that happened on Wall Street on Friday.
U.S. stocks selling off in a big way. The Dow losing 496 points. The S&P down 50 and the Nasdaq off 159. Johnson & Johnson shares plunging 11% after a Reuters report said that the company knew for decades about asbestos in baby powder. The report says that from 1971 to the early 2000s, J&J executives were aware that the company's raw talc and finished powders sometimes tested positive for small amounts of asbestos. J&J has faced thousands of lawsuits alleging those products cause cancer. J&J says the report is one-sided and false. Meanwhile, Costco shares sinking more than 6% after the company missed estimates for its first quarter earnings. Costco saying that more competition in the grocery business has put pressure on the company's margins as it tries to keep up with rivals like Whole Foods and Sam's Club. And Reuters reports that T-Mobile and Sprint expect their $26 billion merger to get approval from a U.S. security panel as early as next week. That coming after those companies did say they would consider ending their use of equipment from China's Huawei on concerns it could enable cyber spying, which Huawei denies. That's the action from the U.S. market. Now back to you in Mumbai.
All right.
Okay, on that note, here is some opinion coming in from experts on the road ahead going forward for the US market.
Getting to the point in the Fed's hiking cycle where there's a lot of questions about which way they go from here. And for that reason, there's a lot of uncertainty in the markets about will the Fed make good on their dot plot and hike 3 more times next year, or will they pause? And I think that underlies a lot of the volatility we've been seeing. There's a lot of debate on Wall Street about what is the next move from the Fed. Until we get more clarity from the central bank, which hopefully will come next week, markets may continue to be somewhat fragile.
We're just going through a correction in the market, and what's fascinating is if you look back since this bull market started, every time we have these corrections, it takes about 2 months to work its way out, and I think we're coming to the tail end of this correction. The other thing that's going on is it's tax loss selling season, so all the areas that are down on the year, they're getting hit worse. But I think we're coming towards the end of this in the next week or so, and I think that's setting up for maybe a little bit of a Christmas rally into the end of the year.
Turning our attention to the European markets, then they closed lower amid some global growth fears, both in the European markets as well as the Chinese data that came out didn't look very, very great. In fact, the Eurozone PMI index, that came in at around 51.7 in the month of December. That's the lowest we've seen in the past 4 years. So on the back of weaker economic data points, we did see all the 3 frontliners ending in the red. But on to some Brexit developments then. British ministers refused the call for a second Brexit referendum. Prime Minister Theresa May condemning predecessor Tony Blair for suggesting another vote, saying it undermines Brexit talks and an insult to the office he once held. May returned from Brussels and now faces an uphill battle to get the deal past the Parliament. Her education and trade ministers are ruling this out, saying that it is not in the best interests of the country at this point.